Okay, time to study for math. Are you ready, Gabe? Gabe, honestly, what are you doing? Are you using a Mario Kart Wii Prima guidebook again to study for your math test? Bro, I've been using this Mario Kart Wii Prima guidebook to study for every single one of our math tests, alright? And I've actually been doing pretty good on them. Would you like to tell me again what your current grade is in that class? I have an 85 in this class, so not too shabby. Exactly. See, all I've been using to study for my math tests is this book, and I have a 92 in that class. A 92? What? Okay, now you gotta show me how you're doing this. Come with me, man. I'll show you. I'll delve you right into this book so we can learn how Mario Kart Wii can help you pass any math class. Mario Kart Wii, the undisputed king of the Mario Karts. However, did you know that it can help you pass your math class regardless of grade? Disclaimer though, I said pass, which means a 60 or above. So if you're looking for a better grade, like in the A range, then I would recommend studying your actual school papers. But who am I to control how you study for math? This is just another method, and once school starts up again, if any of you are daring enough to try this method, then please let me know how it turns out for you in the comments below. I'd love to hear about it. Without further ado, let's start this list. First grade. Okay, so first up is obviously the first grade, and with the extensive research I conducted for the purpose of making this video, I figured out that first graders usually study the basics of numbers and basic properties and concepts such as addition, subtraction, and the concept of weight. So before we start off with anything around here, let me get things straight. In order to understand what I'm saying in general, you have to know the point value for each place in a Grand Prix race in Mario Kart Wii. This chart is provided by Super Mario Wiki, as is most of the information presented in this video, so in case you're ever stuck here, just go to their page and read all about Mario Kart Wii. Nonetheless, in Mario Kart Wii, first place gets 15 points, second place gets 12, third gets 10, fourth gets 8, and then subtract 1 for each higher place. So, quiz time. Let me ask you a question. If I get 5th place on a race in Mario Kart Wii, how many points do I get? Well, we know 4th place gets 8 points, and 5th place comes right after 4th, so we simply subtract 1, and 8 minus 1 equals 7, which means we get 7 points for coming in 5th place. Super math right there. Also, let me show you this. These are the character select screen for a brand new file, and as you can see, there are only 12 characters. However, the most broken character in the game is somehow the easiest to unlock, so let's do that real quick. Now, when we get back to the character select screen, there are 13 characters. Why? Because we just added one to the roster by unlocking him. We also got a new vehicle for the small characters, which brings the small vehicle total up from 6 to 7, because 6 plus 1 equals 7. Simple math. Keep doing this and I'm sure you'll do fine in your class. Next up is just simply the concept of weight. Nothing really too sciencey yet. I could just sit here telling you that the big characters are heavier and that the small characters are lighter. But I think it'd be easier to simply show you guys how weight affects your surroundings based on the character you use. Second grade. So now that you all graduated first grade with a decent math score, it's time to move on to the next grade, which is obviously second grade. In the second grade, you learn things such as basic fractions, time, and greater than / less than. Let's just look back at the point boards for Mario Kart Wii. As you can see, getting first place is greater than getting any other place, because 15 points is the most points you can get in just one race. When doing multiple races, however, you can see that the more points you earn, the better rank you will be positioned, which is why it's always best to be at the front of the pack as long as possible. Now you also learn about fractions and time, both of which you could get a nifty lesson from by simply playing time trials, for now at least. In time trials, you race against a clock in a 3-lap race. That's right. Every course in this game is 3 laps. Therefore, every time you complete a lap, you just completed 1/3 of the course. 1 lap out of 3 total laps needed for the race to finish. When you complete 2 laps, you are 2/3 of the way through to finishing the race. Add 1 more lap and you have now completed the race and have finished 3 out of 3 laps, or 1 whole course. That's right, when the numerator and the denominator are the same number, or in Mario Kart Wii terms, when the number of laps completed equals the number of laps a course has to offer, then the total simply equals 1. That's it. It's just that simple, guys. To tell time, well, Mario Kart Wii does it for you, essentially. Every 60 seconds can be translated to 1 minute, and even though Mario Kart Wii doesn't show you this, 60 minutes actually equals 1 hour. I know, mind-blowing. There are 24 hours in a day, but in 2nd grade, minutes and seconds are your primary units of time, and that's where Mario Kart Wii can help you out. 3rd grade. Alright, so we're moving on kind of a slow pace, but we've made it to 3rd grade right now. Based on my analysis, it seems as though 3rd graders learn multiplication and division, symmetry, and the associative property. Let's do this one backwards. As you can see in this race, if I get 1st place in one race, which is 15 points, and then I get 11th on the next race, which is 1 point, then I will have a total of 16 points, because 15 plus 1 equals 16. Well, guess what? If I get 11th place on the first race, and then 1st place the next one, then I will also get 16 points, because just as 15 plus 1 equals 16, 1 plus 15 also equals 16. That is the associative property, which you guys should know in the 3rd grade. The next subject is symmetry. It's kind of hard to describe, so here's symmetry, and here's symmetry. That simple. Lastly, we got multiplication and division. Let's do this by looking at the amount of courses there are in the game. As you can see, there are 8 cups in the entire game, and each cup contains 4 courses. Multiplication is simply adding that number any amount of times. For example, you want to figure out how many individual courses there are in the game. Well, we know there are 8 cups, each containing 4 courses. Therefore, by the definition of multiplication, if we take 4 8s and add them together, we get 32, because 8 plus 8 plus 8 plus 8 equals 32. And that is the answer to how many courses there are in the game. Division works the same way, but it's backwards. If you knew the total amount of courses but didn't know how many were in each cup, you just took that number 32 and divided by 8, and you end up with 4 because it's simply backwards multiplication. After this, pretty much you just need to memorize these equations and you'll be masters of multiplication and division. 4th grade. In 4th grade, you learn a variety of things, but the basics include the idea of probability and shapes. For shapes, I would look no further than shapes of the maps of the courses and the stages in the game. For example, the battle stage chain chomp wheel is just a plain circle, while Moonview Highway is basically a triangle. I mean, you could say, there's the little tip at the top that kind of, it's a triangle. Let's just keep it simple. And Toad's Factory is a square, pretty much, except for that corner, but it's a square. If you know how to drive on these tracks, then you should be able to figure out the patterns on each of those shapes. Don't worry, in 4th grade, you don't have to really do much with these shapes, except for knowing their properties and such. However, you guys also learn about probability. This is simple, alright? You just want to go to the rules in a random versus session in Mario Kart Wii. Set the courses to random. Therefore, all 32 courses will show up at random. The question is then, what is the probability that when starting a versus race, that let's say SNES Ghost Valley 2 gets picked? Well, it'd be 1 out of 32 probability, because that course has an equal probability of being selected than all of the 31 other courses in that game. That is the basics of probability. However, let's say this. Now that you completed Ghost Valley 2, what is the chance that, say, GCN Mario Circuit gets picked now? There are now only 31 tracks left in the random rotation since you completed Ghost Valley 2, which simply means that there is a 1 out of 31 chance for GCN Mario Circuit to be selected. That is all you need to know. Keep doing that, and you should be fine. 5th grade. Oh boy, 5th grade! You know what that means, do ya? That means I get to show you this! Okay. Don't get scared now. This is pretty much what you guys are being taught here. Decimals. Oh, what are decimals, you may ask? Well, decimals are pretty much organized fractions, in my opinion. They are represented by a period between the whole number and the decimal and count as numbers between 0 and 1. If you leave them on their own, of course. Before we get into this mess, let's just do something basic. 0.5, in case you didn't know, is the exact same thing as 1/2, which means that 1/2 plus 1/2 equals 1. Just as 0.5 plus 0.5 equals 1. Therefore, 0.5 equals 1/2. Just like in this chart, the more zeros there are between the dot and the number, the smaller that total number is. Let's take this 0.000474 stat, for example. The 0 on the left of the dot is the ones place, which you all should already know. But then the 0 on the right of the dot is the tens place. Then the 0 next to that is the hundreds place. Then the thousands place. Then the 4 represents the 10,000s place. The 7 represents the 100,000s place. And the last 4 digit is in the millions place. You'll likely never go this far for decimals while you're in 5th grade, but these are the decimals MKWE provides you with. So if you could get a good understanding of how to add these decimals with other numbers and such, then you should be good. Oh, you don't know how to add decimals to numbers yet? Well, it's actually pretty easy. The number 1 can be represented with 1.0. So if you want to add 0.000474 to 1, then you just do 0.000474 plus 1, and you end up with 1.000474. It can get a little more complicated than that in actual school once you have decimals going over 1, if you add them together. But just remember, this video is simply about the basics. 6th grade. Now, the next couple of grades is kind of hard to relate to Mario Kart Wii because they get into the more complicated stuff, of course, but I will continue to try my best here. So based on my analysis, 6th graders learn about integers, measurements, and percents/rates. Let's start with integers. If you can count it, it's an integer. An integer is basically a whole number, so like just count the amount of integers of characters and carts there are in the game. Those are all integers. You are counting integers right there. Integer definition is just so you know how to differentiate between integers and non-integers when you get into that type of lesson. For measurements, there's not really much this game can teach you about measurements. However, if you go to Mario Kart 64's page on Super Mario Wiki, they give you the length of every course in meters. So if you look at the length of Mario Raceway, for example, and Sherbet Land, and Bowser's Castle, and DK's Jungle Parkway, then you could drive around those courses and get a feel for those measurements. No? I'm sorry, I know that doesn't help you about basic measurements, because they're hard to relate to this game, so you can't really rely on this game for that unit, unless somehow it actually helps you. However, though, when it comes to percents, let's get down to business. Percents go all the way up to 100% as far as you need to know. And 100% is equivalent to many things in math, such as 1 or 3 out of 3. Wait a minute. Haven't we seen 3 out of 3 somewhere before? Yes. During time trials. You can test your percentage skills with time trials. When you finish a race, you are 100% of the way done, obviously, because you completed the race. However, when you only finish one lap, you are 1/3 of the way done, like we learned in 2nd grade, or 100 divided by 3, which is 33.3% of the way done. If you learn how to convert fractions into decimals in school, then this mode should do the trick for you. 7th grade. We're making our way through middle school here as we now enter the 7th grade, where you learn all about triangles, negative numbers, and prime and composite numbers. For triangles, just look at Moonview Highway is practically shaped as a triangle. I mean, you don't think so? Let's deal with it for now. It'll be simple, alright? What you need to remember, though, is that triangles have a total of 180 degrees for all three angles inside of the triangle itself. If the triangle had the same angle on all three sides, and you could only equal 180, then what angles do each side need to be to equal to each other and add up to 180? Well, if you watch the 4th grade section, you could do some simple division, or to do it the Mario Kart Wii way, just come in first place on all 4 races in a Grand Prix, and you will find your answer. For negative numbers, they're kind of hard to describe though. Basically, they're numbers below 0, but keep counting upwards like regular numbers. So if you were counting down, it'd go 3, 2, 1, 0, then -1, -2, and -3, and so forth, all the way up to whatever. Let's say you were in first for any race in Mario Kart Wii. However, there were actually 2 people in front of you. I know that's not how racing works, but let's pretend it does for a second. You'd be in first place, and then the person directly in front of you would be in 0th place, while the person in front of that guy would be in -1st place. And then -2nd place is if there was a guy in front of that guy. That's pretty much how negative numbers work. Prime and composite numbers do not relate to Mario Kart Wii whatsoever. But since you're watching the 7th grade part of this, you should know how multiplication works by now. And at this point, you should know that at least 1 times anything is that number. However, if that number can only be multiplied by itself and 1 to equal itself, then that number is prime. Every other number is what's called composite. So to see if you understood, from 1st place to 12th in Mario Kart Wii, which numbers are prime? Got it? Nope. I knew you wouldn't. It's actually 3rd, 5th, 7th, and 11th place. Those are all the prime numbers, so don't finish in those places or you get bad luck, alright? 8th grade. After watching this, I'm probably going to get comments saying, Gabe, this isn't Mario Kart Wii teaching me math. It's just you teaching math with Mario Kart Wii gameplay in the background. Well, that's what this may seem like after watching the next 2 sections, because what you guys learn in math pretty much has nothing to do with Mario Kart Wii. I will still try my best, though, to relate some Mario Kart Wii content to what you 8th graders are learning, though. But since you guys are learning scientific notation, absolute value, and square roots, this is going to be a little tricky. Scientific notation can include a number between 1 and 10, excluding 10, multiplied by an exponent with base 10. There's a lot of 10s there, so stay with me. Like if you had 1 times 10 squared, for example, that would equal 100. Don't believe me? Go to Mario Kart Wii then, race 10 courses and get 3rd every single time and tell me what you get for a total. Exactly. Next up is absolute value. Remember those negative numbers we talked about earlier? Well, put these bars around it and they're suddenly no longer negative. I don't know why, but rather the positive version of that number. Test yourself while you're racing. If you get 11th place, you get 1 point. What 2 numbers could be placed in absolute value bars and generate that same answer of 1 point? Well, it'd actually be 1 and -1. Simple as that. Square roots now, let's actually take this to the license screen. There are 4 licenses stacked in a particular order, whereas there's the same amount of licenses on each row and each column. That's right. To find square roots, just take the square, count 1 row and 1 column. If they are the same amount, then that is your answer. You can even practice within a single license, all the way up to the square root of 16. So here's the square. If you know what the square root of 16 is, give this video a like. And if not, then don't dislike it, because you'll learn it eventually. Patience is all you need. Algebra I. Now we enter the days of high school, where you really should be studying on your own instead of relying on this video because, well, in the long run, let me just get to the info and talk about the semi-satirical nature of this video later. In Algebra 1, I really couldn't figure out what you guys learned that much, especially since it's been so long since I've taken Algebra. I know you guys deal with functions for some parts of the year, but I'll save that for Algebra 2. For you guys, I'm going to save the percent increase and decrease in the inequalities units for you guys. Now, Mario Kart Wii does these topics very simply, so even though I know you guys use variables in your equations, you'll find out eventually that it's pretty much the same thing as if you didn't have a variable. The same rules still apply. You could also fool around with the race count and the versus rule screen to choose a certain number of races and then determine how much percent in that session each race is, I should say. That's one way to do percent increase. The other way, just look at your textbook. Let's be honest. For inequalities, you could simply refer back to the charts with all the combinations and fiddle around them with a little bit to see if you understand. If you look at the charts deep enough, you can solve this question. In the speed category, blank plus Funky Kong is greater than the spear plus Funky Kong. In speed, let's say this. Obviously, Funky Kong is the fastest character in the game, but the spear is not the fastest vehicle in the game. No, I actually learned that myself, pretty shockingly enough. That title actually goes to the Jet Setter, which is the answer to that question. You can use that type of magic right there to practice your Algebra 1 skills. Geometry. So remember when I said it would be kinda hard to relate Mario Kart Wii to a certain topic, but I'd try anyway? Well, for those of you taking geometry, this is it. Let me see what I can do for you guys. You guys learn all about the geometrical points, lines, angles, polygons. You know it. You guys know what a line is. It's just a simple straight with no curves. A linear set of points stretching from point A to point B. Simple as that. Sometimes, though, in order to be successful at geometry, and especially those proofs, you need to be good at creating fake lines, which could actually help you out at solving the problem, as you can see here. I don't really need to explain points because they're everywhere, but I'll leave you with this. Here on Mario Raceway, Funky's head seems to be roughly 5 Funky heads to the right of the starting line and half a Funky head below it. Therefore, his coordinate would be 5, negative 0.5. In real class, though, you should never assume where points are. I'm just using this as an example to help you guys out by the time you get to using the distance formula and all that stuff that require coordinates. Polygons, you ask? We already talked about shapes enough times in this video, but for angles, all I could say is that the sharper and longer you hold a drift in Mario Kart Wii, the smaller the angle, because you will be trying to get it closer to 0 degrees. Don't forget that when solving those proofs, especially about circles. Use the information given to you, such as this diameter right here, which can help you find other angles and measurements while doing your proofs. Algebra II. Okay, you guys are taking Algebra 2 may feel a little ripped off because I'm barely covering one topic, but trust me, the bulk of your year is going to be centered around quadratics and what to do with them. Now, I can't help you with operations involving quadratics, such as the synthetic division and all of that kind of stuff that I forgot. However, I can help you with identification of functions, and I thought of this stupidly clever and easy trick to help you understand quadratics better. It's actually legit. I'm so happy I found it. Okay, so let's pretend you don't know how to tell the difference between a quadratic function and a linear one. Well, a quadratic goes by the expression ax squared plus bx plus c, while a linear function goes by the good old mx plus b. As you can see, the highest exponent number on a quadratic is 2 because of the x squared, while there is no x squared on the linear function, as x, also known as x to the first, is simply the highest exponent variable. In case you don't know all that quadratic functions are curves and all linear functions are lines, here's a really great tip. When using Funky Kong in the Flame Runner and Mario Kart Wii, how do you make curves? You drift. And how many wheels on your bike do you need to drift? That's right, 2. And what is the highest exponent number on a quadratic function which results in a curve on the graph? 2. See where I'm going with this? If you wanted to go in a straight line, which is best done by wheeling, how many wheels do you need to wheelie? Just 1. What is the highest exponent value on a variable for a linear function, which just so happens to be a line? 1. It's easy as that. Now you will never have trouble differentiating between your quadratics and your linear lines. Before you say it, you're welcome. Pre-calculus. Okay, so for those of you taking pre-calculus, well, good luck. That class is a tough one. Anyways, unfortunately, Mario Kart Wii is not as helpful for this class as it is for others. But that's a-okay, because you know why? It's because your class learns all about trigonometry in the unit circle. Yay! What better place to be than Change Hop Wheel, which is a circle? Exactly. I would just say hop on that course and have some fun. Just look at the mini-map and you know what to do with that. For example, the rightmost point of that mini-map would be the point 1, 0, or 0 radians. You don't know what radians mean? It's alright, I don't need... just kidding, I know what they mean. It's also important to know that 360 degrees around a flat circle is equivalent to 2 pi radians, and 180 degrees is simply pi radians. That's how that kind of works. The rest of the conversions is simply memorization. I feel like I may have let you guys down, but maybe that's just a sign that you probably shouldn't study for your pre-calc test by playing Mario Kart Wii unless you really thought that the change out wheel analogy helped you out at all, which in that case I am shocked. Calculus / physics. We are not done yet, ladies and gentlemen. There are some people like me, of course, who took straight up calculus when they were seniors in high school. So I definitely cannot forget those who will be taking calculus as high school seniors. Calculus is basically derivatives. That's pretty much all you know. Basically, no derivatives and you're good to go. Now you may be asking yourself, Gabe, how on earth is Mario Kart Wii going to help me with derivatives, for crying out loud? Well, in the long run, it's really not. I'm sorry to say. However, you can relate Mario Kart Wii pretty well to the things you learn in physics class, such as displacement, position, velocity, and acceleration. That's right, all that Unit 1 stuff. We're going to take this to Mario Raceway here. Let's start with position. Position is simple. It's where you are on the map relative to the origin point, which in Mario Kart Wii's case is the starting line. If you happen to be above the starting line, then you are traveling in a positive distance. But if you happen to be traveling below the starting line, then your position will become negative relative to the starting line origin point. That's simple enough. Displacement, on the other hand, is also simple, but it can be easily confused with distance. Displacement is what's called a vector quantity, which has to deal with magnitude and direction. It's also the distance in a straight line relative to the starting line. So let's say you just start a race and go straight and stop. Well, in actuality, your displacement at this point, barely past the starting line, would be more than your displacement as soon as you complete your first lap. Even though you traveled 567 meters in distance, your displacement would be 0 meters because you ended right back at the starting line. But that's not all I have to show you, physics and calculus takers. Those of you taking calculus are struggling with derivatives, right? Well, of course you are. Everybody does. But in physics, derivatives are expressed as quantities over time. That's because how things work in the real world. We talked about position, but there is in fact a derivative of position. It's called velocity. Velocity is described as the delta x over t, which is the change in position over time, with the units being meters per second. Let's just pretend you guys would be, doing a lap, and once you guys complete a lap in a certain amount of time, and then your displacement or position 567 meters across how many seconds, you could calculate that, and then that would be your velocity. That would be your speed. So You could always calculate like that and you'd be acing Unit 1 in physics. Anyways, you experience velocity, by the way, in Mario Kart Wii simply by moving like this. It's just the vector version of speed because it's possible to have negative velocities at the same time. Remember that velocity is the derivative of position, and you should be good, be it for physics or calculus. But that's not all. There's also this funny thing called acceleration, which just so happens to be the rate your velocity changes over time or change in velocity over t. And acceleration has a unit of meters per second squared. I can't show you this on Mario's Racer, just like I showed you how to calculate velocity, but just simply by completing a lap. That means that acceleration is actually the derivative of velocity, which you will learn in physics class. What does that make of the relationship between acceleration and position then? Well, that means acceleration is what's called a double derivative of position. Scary stuff, am I right? Of course I am. If you're still confused, then I don't know what to say. This is just a basic demonstration on how Mario Kart Wii can help you in your math class. But if you still need help with your derivatives, just know nx to the n minus 1 power and you're good to go. However, you guys probably have questions on antiderivatives too, you calculus takers. What I have to say about that? Well, you know, you really just need a 3 to pass your exam. You know, you can kind of skip those antiderivative parts. You don't need that. As long as you're good with your derivatives, that's all you need to know. So this was my 500th video, and I wanted to do something special for it, and I really hope I delivered. Originally, this was going to be a completely satirical video, but I think for at least some of the parts, I actually got some legitimate methods of studying and learning in there, which is actually really cool considering it's a video game helping you out with math. Once again, I highly do not recommend using this video to help you with your entire math class unless you actually got something from it, as this is meant to be a basic overview of what each grade is learning. With that being said, this is the first time I ever wrote a script for one of my videos, and doing that took me alone hours upon hours across multiple days, which means I put a lot of effort into something that may or may not even be useful for you. So if you guys could please give this video a like, I would really appreciate it. Also, comment of any feedback you guys have, and please don't forget to subscribe to my channel to stay tuned for some more amazing Mario Kart content like this. I have a lot more on the way, so stay tuned to this. Probably not as high quality as this. Maybe I'll try. We'll see what happens, but, you know, let's see what happens. Stay tuned for that, because I know you don't want to miss out. With that being said, thank you so much for watching. This has been G Wallers, signing out.